Hello everyone. So let's get started by downloading my submitted code. Right. So we can quickly verify that it's 21st July 11/17 and this is 21st July 11/17. I'll quickly rename them. I will also copy them to their respective folders. So server in server application and client in client 2. I'm using the same client for both client 1 and client 2. All right. So let's quickly go over the six functionalities. So I will first just show all the part where authentication is done. It's not quite visible during the live demo. So let's get started with client.py. So here we see I haven't modified post requests at all. We are using HTTPS and which uses node certificate and node key, which is in the cert director of the current working directory of the client. So let's quickly verify that. So I'm in client 2 directory. In the certs, we see these folders exist, these files exist. So that's client 1. So here what happens is that these certificates I've created by using the same CA cert, which are used for generating the server certificates as well. And that's how two-way authentication is established. If these keys and certificates are incorrect, we won't be able to establish a connection with the server itself in the first place. All right. Now what happens during login process is that we accept the user's private key as the input and we sign a particular string statement using that user's private key and we send it across to the server. Now I won't go into the details, coding and implementation details, but just few things I would like to gloss over. So there was a requirement where we had to just move the files from checkout folder to check-in folder in case the file has already been checked out earlier. So that's why on successful checkout, I just maintain that list. And I also compute the hash of the successfully checked out file and I persist it on the disk. So this is required because during logout, we only need to check in the modified files. So in order to check if the file was modified or not, I use that hash file. So for every file in that checkout directory of the client, I just compute the hash of that file again and I compare it against the hash file that had persisted upon successful checkout. Now, if these hashes don't match, that means the file has modified and we send a check-in request for that file with security flag 2. If they are the same, that means the file has not been modified and we do not check in that request, right? So in server, what happens is we maintain a session token, which is a global variable for a current active session. So I'll just talk about it later. So here what happens is in login, we receive the signed and the signed statement, and then we verify it by using the user's public key. I'm using cryptography Python library to perform all the cryptographic utilities. So here the user key is used to verify. Upon successful verification only, we generate the session token and we send it to the client. The client then uses that session token for all its subsequent requests, and that is how we validate if the session is the correct session or not. And so let's say if user 1 has signed the document and if we are trying to verify it by using user 2, then the verification will fail and it will result in invalid signature and the user won't be allowed to log in into the system in the first place. All right, so let's get started with the demo. So before starting, I'll just show all I'll just clear everything up. So this is the server documents folder. This is client 1's checkout folder. And this is client 2's checkout folder. All right. So I'll start the server. Oops, I must have. Oh, I must have modified it while Yeah, okay. So let me do one thing. I'll stop this server and I'll copy the file again. So let me remove this server.py and let me copy back the downloaded one, because while just showing it to you all, just the mouse was moved and there was an indentation error. So this server, I'll copy it back to its location. All right, now it should work. All right, so the server is up and running. Now let's start the client. This is user1.key. The user was successfully logged in. This is user2. And I'm using client2 for user2 just for demo purposes. And I'll use same client2 for user3 as well. All right, so we've logged into all three users. Okay, so this is user3 with user1.key. Okay, let's try that. So I'll log out. The way I've implemented logout is it terminates the current session and it restarts a new session. So I'll say user1, but I'll try user3.key. Was that right? Oh, I think it was the other way around. So it's user3 with user1.key and the login fails naturally because the key is not correct. So now we will log in correctly again. All right, so there we go. Now let's see, user one checks in file one with security flag. So we are user one. I check in the file one.txt with one. Requested file does not exist onto the system. That is very strange. Let me quickly check. Sorry about that. Oh, I deleted check-in. Okay, let me quickly create one. I'll just say file one new. Instead of checkout folder, I mistakenly cleared out the check-in folder at the start of the demo. Okay, so I was supposed to clear this folder. Now it's clear. Okay, right. I'm really sorry about that. Also, let me create file2 folder that would also not exist. Okay, this is good. Very sorry about that. So let's start over. So we've completed first three steps. We are at the fourth step. User one checks file one with security one. So I'm user one. I check in file one.txt with. So here now check-in is successful. So now let's verify this in the documents folder of the server. So all these files were created. So file one is now encrypted. The key also we can verify. Encrypted file is just a copy of that encrypted file, and we also maintain a metadata file. So since user one was the first active user to successfully check in, user one becomes the owner of file one.txt. Right now, let's see user two checks in file two with integrity flag. So I'm user two. I check in file two.txt with integrity file 2. The check-in was successful. Let's check in the documents folder again. So we have file2.txt and we also have metadata for file 2. And here the user 2 is now the owner of the file. Perfect. Now user 1 checks out file 1 and user 2 checks out file 1. So we are at user 1. I do a checkout request for file1.txt. And the checkout was successful. So let's quickly see the checkout folder of client one. So these are just checked out files. So if you see cat file1.txt, it's the file that we created. And the hash of the file that I mentioned is just used for to check whether the file has been modified or not during logout process. So this hash is the hash of file1.txt. All right. Now we have user2 checking out file2. So I'm user2, I check out file2.txt. The checkout was successful. Let's see the checkout folder. We have file2.txt and we have its corresponding hash file also. All right. Now user1 checks out file2. So this was allowed because user2 owns file2 and we performed a checkout at user2. And since we haven't issued a grant policy yet, only the owner is authorized to perform these operations. Now what we are going to do is in step 8, user1 checks out file2. Okay, so let's check out file2.txt. So we say access denied. This is expected because if you see the metadata of file1, metadata of file2, it says user2 is the owner, but I'm checking it out as user1. So I'm not the owner of the file, so I wasn't allowed access. Next is ninth step is user2 checks out file1. So we should see similar behavior. So check out file1. So again, as expected, the access has been denied. So this is because file1 is owned by user1, but I made a checkout request as user2. So that won't be allowed. All right, now let's go to step 10 where user1 grants checkout file1 to user1. So I'm user1, I'm granting access. So I can issue this grant because user1 is the owner of file1. Target user is user2, checkout request, time duration is 40 seconds. So the access was successfully granted. Now user2 checks out file1. Okay, so now let's go. So earlier we were not allowed to check in this file. Now let's see what happens. So now the checkout was successful for user2, and that is because of the grant policy that we added. So this is client 2, right? So we see that file1 has been checked out successfully. Now there would be a change in metadata file for file1 because a grant was issued to it. So in addition to the original fields, we add target user, user2, access type, and time duration of 40 seconds. So before every check-in, check-out, in the code, we verify that a grant policy is satisfied or not. So that is where we read this metadata file. So this valid until is just a field of current timestamp plus the time duration of 40 seconds for the expiry check. So that is how that is. And all right, so user3 checks out file1. Now user3 is not the owner of the file and is also not present, is not granted access, right? So let's see what happens. I'm now user3. I do a checkout on user3 does a checkout on file1.txt and I'm denying access because I'm not the owner and no grant policy exists for user3. Now wait for the granted period and let's perform step 11 again. All right, so I believe 40 seconds should have passed by now. So I am in user2 and I'm checking out file1.txt again. And now I've been denied access because 40 seconds have been elapsed, right? So this is expired, so I can no longer check out the file. Now let's see, user1 deletes file1. So I'm user1, I perform a delete on file1.txt. The file was successfully deleted. Now also only the owner can delete the file. Now since user1 owns file1, I can delete the file. So what happens on the server side is if you see all file1 related files have been deleted. All right, and now user1 deletes file2. Okay, user1 deletes file2.txt. So this delete is denied because file2 is owned by user2 and not by user1. So, and this is done by this validation by reading this metadata file of file2. And here the owner is user2, but I'm using user1. So the deletion was not allowed, but user2 can delete. the file. So let's try that. Now we have file2.txt and we see it was successfully deleted. We can verify this in the documents folder. So nothing exists now. Perfect. So now let's log out of user1. So before that, I'll log out of user1 from client1. So let's see the checkout directory. I have these two files. Now I'll log out from client1 user1. Okay, and if you see, nothing has been checked in because no file was modified. Now let me modify this file in client1. I'll just write some gibberish data. Okay, now the file is modified. So the hash of this new file and this successful checkout is different. So I can detect on logout that some file is modified. So let me log in again as user1 and I say logout. Now it says, oh, this file is modified. I need to check it in again. So now if you see, that file is checked in again onto the server side because it was modified. So I think, yep, that covers everything up. Thank you very much.